Watkins Glen International Raceway for race number 3 here of the WSRL IndyCar Series. My name is Adam Thompson, and in the commentary booth with me tonight is the always lovely, the one, the only, Randall McGrew. We got Dustin Ollis down there in the production trailer, working all the cameras, probably doing more than me and Randall combined, so thank you for all your help, Dustin. But anyways, on to round 3 here at Watkins Glen. It's nicknamed the Glen. It's obviously an automobile racetrack located in the town of Dix, just southwest of the village of Watkins Glen, New York, at the southern tip of Seneca Lake. It was long known around the world as a home of Formula One United States Grand Prix, which it hosted for 20 consecutive years until 1980. In addition, the site has also been home to the road racing of nearly every class, including the World Sports Car Championship, Trans Am, Can-Am, NASCAR Cup Series, the International Motorsports Association, and the IndyCar Series. The facility is currently owned by NASCAR. Randall, welcome in. What do you think tonight? Give me your predictions, and man, this track should be a lot of fun with these Indy cars rumbling around here.
Watkins Glen always provides. We're going to see a lot of close racing. The slipstream can bring people into the fight that you wouldn't expect at the last minute. Push to pass might become push to defend towards the end of the race. And pit strategy is going to be the key here. We're on board with Justin Brary as he's dipping into turn 1, just barely touching that inside curb. They want to stay off these big curbs in these cars that can easily get floor damage, really slow your car down. Real fingertip driving now through the S's up the hill, letting that fifth gear rev all the way out until you crest the top of the hill, move the car over to the left-hand side of the track. You're going to brake it about that Marshall stand on the left before you pitch the car in. And not even really much of a brake, more of a lift, it seems like, using engine braking. Coming through the sweeper is very difficult to pick a line. You can keep it tight and have probably a better exit, or you can run it out a little bit wide, have a bit higher entry speed, and maybe make up some time on your opponents that way. It comes down through the toe of the boot, the very tricky exit. Once you get to the throttle, the front end just does not want to have any grip, and you see he runs all the way out to the grass there. Coming down to the heel of the boot. First gear corner, I found it to be first gear corner. He may be running in the second gear, using all that runoff, and then the transition back up onto the cup course is very tricky. You see that transition there. The camber changes. The back end likes to step out. You have to be very careful here. The penultimate corner, pretty much flat out. Maybe a small lift on the primaries, and then a quick dive of the brake down into the final corner. Use all the track width. Try to stay out of that wall, and that's a flying lap.
Yeah, flying lap. You said it right there. He was absolutely flying. Well, it looked like he was. He goes 4th place right now, about 1.2 seconds off the lead of Serrano. But you did do some practices earlier today, Randall, I've heard. How is that bus stop chicane in these Indy cars? Because I've seen from some of the drivers that it gets pretty gnarly through there.
So I do a lot of sports car racing here, and I'm used to just clobbering the curbs going into the bus stop, and you really cannot do that in a car like this. You need to dance through there, maybe just barely touch it like we saw Justin Barrera do, but you need to stay off of those curbs. They will definitely unsettle the car, even if they don't do floor damage.
So, in practice here, we saw this number 70, a new driver to this league, Emma Carter. She has set 3 green sectors. Looks like she may actually get across the line here one.
And I think we lost Adam there momentarily. He was so excited that he's muted himself. And Emma Carter jumps up to P2. Now, we were on board with Justin Barrera. He's now down to P6. He is the first in the cars with the primary on in qualifying. There's a new rule they've changed in this league. You must now start on the tire that you qualify on. So all these drivers that are up here in the front on the reds must start on those reds. So we'll see that tire fall off pretty quickly. And some of those drivers with the primaries will rally back and have more pace in the long run. We're definitely going to need 2 stops here to have enough fuel to make it to the end. So it's going to be interesting to see who takes 2 sets of reds and who takes 2 sets of primaries. And I think we're still without Adam. And so now we are on board with Brian Long, the league administrator. He's coming through the penultimate corner. You see he's on those alternate tires, easily flat through that second to last corner. Quick downshift down the 4th gear for the final corner, down the front straightaway, really letting 5th gear ride out here. Just barely clipping the curbs. They really need to stay off of the big curbs. They're able to take the exit curb just fine, but that big curb on the inside of turn 1 can really hurt these cars. So you see that they're staying well away from it at the apex. Castro now moves up to the top of the board on the primaries of the 127-187. It's going to put him P6 overall. And Brian really hitting the curbs there. And you saw how the front end jumped. And it looked like the front wheels may have actually lost contact. You can really cause some floor damage by doing that. Hopefully he got away with it. This turn down into the boot is very tricky. You have to brake much later than you normally would think. And get a very late apex, or else you will run out of real estate there at the exit. See Brian using all the track width. It's very easy to run wide there at that corner, and you're going to see drivers, especially once their tires start to fall off, really struggle with that exit. They'll be turning the wheel too much, losing the rear end, or having to back out and just losing time down that little straightaway from having to lift at corner exit. Making his way through the end of the lap here. We'll see what kind of lap time he gets. Looks like Emma Carter is on an out lap, has decided to take a second shot at it with a new set of tires. Brian Long's going to cross the line. No improvement, stays in P5, 7/10 off the leader. We're on board with Emma Carter now in her out lap, coming now through the toe of the boot. These tires are still not quite at the temperature. The reds come up to temperature in about a lap. The primaries take 2 to 3 laps to really come in and start to feel fast. These red alternates, she's still struggling with a little bit of grip there, but should be able to make it a really good, strong lap here. Coming to the start-finish line, she should be able to attack. The tires should be up to temperature now. You can hear no lift going in to turn 10. Going to set up this final corner and get a good run down the straightaway. Gets very close to the wall, only inches between her and the wall as she starts another flying lap. And we'll see if she's got anything for Q-Nin or Serrano ahead of her. Pretty tidy run through turn 1. It looks pretty fast. You might see some moves here in the S's, some people on push to pass and some people not. It's worth about 5 to 6 tenths without draft. So with draft, it's going to be worth even more. Let's see how she takes the bus stop chicane here. Very late on the brakes. Just the perfect amount of curb. The car just looks absolutely planted through that section with the amount of curb that she was taking. Runs a little bit wide off the turn 5, through the chute and down into the boot section of the track, using all of the exit curbing. Very tidy, looks very quick. Here through turn 7, you can brake much later than you would normally think as well. These cars have a lot of downforce on them. You can really lean on it through that corner. The uphill nature of it lends some more grip to the front end. You can really hammer the brakes late, get the car slowed down in the corner, and then power out. Turn 9 is going to be tricky. If she's too greedy here, she could see the rear end step out, and it looks pretty clean. So this should be a good lap. She's been green in all 4 sectors so far. Coming through the final corner, can she get it up? Can she get it done? Can she move up? She's 4 tenths behind Serrano now, and does improve, but not quite enough to pass Serrano. Moves up to P2, only 300ths off Serrano. So quite an improvement and a good lap out of Emma. This is her first race with this league, so she's off to a really good start. Augustin Castro, we saw him with the heartbreak race 1 at Road America. Came out on those cold tires and lost it in the first corner after really dominating the first 2/3 of that race. And he may or may not be able to make this lap finish. He's very close on time. He's got about 15 seconds now, so I don't think he will quite make it. He was green in sector 3, yellow in sectors 1 and 2. And I think he's just going to come up a little bit shy on time here, but he will be the first car on the primary tires. So look for Castro to stretch out this first stint and lead some laps early on once you see some of those leaders start to pit on those alternates. And that brings qualifying to an end, so we'll bring up the grid now for you. Ricardo Serrano from Mexico takes the pole with a 1:26.423. Emma Carter only 3/100ths off in her first race. Let's see if she can take it to Serrano on that first lap. Q Nin in P3, Joshua Benjamin P4, Brian Long in P5, Augustin Castro, the first of the primary tires, in P6, P7, Brian Hotham, Carson Keene in P8, P9, Justin Barrera, your P3 finisher from last week, Bobby Flack, your P2 finisher from last week, in P10, David Stevenson in P11, Neil Alexander, P12, Jake Luther in P13, Barry Cochran in 14th, Mike Weir in 15th, Christian Britzko in 16th, Will Love in 17th, Gavin Ellsworth in 18th, Kevin Dixon in 19th, and Matthew Dweeter in 20th. Clay Harris starts 21st, and Eric Staropoli will start 22nd. And if I remember right, during that first race, Eric Staropoli had a great start and was really making his way up through the field and found trouble early. So hopefully he's able to turn his fortunes around this week and able to work his way up from shotgun on the field. They'll be doing a full pace lap here. You'll see them trying to warm the tires a bit, probably trying to save fuel. The more fuel you save, the less you have to put in the car at the end of the race. These cars have a few different fuel mappings. I was not very successful in saving fuel by changing the fuel mapping myself. You just have to lift and coast and employ other tactics. But they do have some fuel options available to them in the car. Also, it'll be interesting to see who comes in and changes from reds to blacks, blacks to reds, or keeps the same compound on. They're going to run the same compound at least twice, and they must run both compounds once. The cars making their way now into the S's. We see them single file at the front and staying double file towards the back. See the leaders weaving their cars around, trying to get some surface temperature into those tires. You may see them briefly speed up and hit the brakes to try to get a little core temperature in their tires and to heat up their brakes and also heat up the surface of those tires with that brake temperature. With a very stately procession now on the straightaway down to the bus stop, and this is the last time that it will be this calm. The next time they come to this corner, it will be in anger and in a mess of cars, likely 3 or even 4 wide. So it's going to be very interesting to see how much the slipstream plays effect. Oh, we have an issue at the front. Emma Carter is lost the front wing of that car coming out of the bus stop and one of the front wheels. She's going to have to limp that around to the pits. We're going to see what happened here. Maybe just got a little too happy on the throttle. Yes, that's exactly what happened. Those cold tires bit her. The rear end broke loose, sent her into that tire barrier. Luckily for her, they do have 2 fast repairs, so she will be able to pull that into the pits. And it looks like she's going to stop and tow. She'll be able to get that car repaired and get back out on track and hopefully make up some of those lost positions. But heartbreak early for Emma Carter. That's really unfortunate after a really strong qualifying performance and being at the top of the timing board in practice. She was definitely hoping for more, and cold tires just got the best of her. It's happened to all of us some point in sim racing. Sometimes you just pull a mistake that you ultimately end up regretting. And I'm getting word now that Alex Anderson is filling in for Adam Thompson, as Adam Thompson is having some sort of network issues. Alex, welcome to the booth.
Yeah, well, Randall, I'm not gonna lie to you. I learned about this about 30 seconds ago, and I figured, well, you know what? I'll help you out, so that way you don't have to sit here by yourself. So here we are. So this is usually I cover Spec 5 today, but my first WSRL IndyCar Series race. So Randall, if you've covered past races, what is the series like?
It's very intense. There's a wide range of strategies that will be employed, and we'll expect to see some cars that you didn't think were actually racing for position together at the end of the race, fighting for it at the end. They're coming to take the green now.
Oh, well, it appears I've got...
And here we are. Green flag is in the air. Ricardo Serrano going to lead the pack down to turn 1. We're seeing them fanning out behind it. Still looking pretty orderly. Nobody making any really bold moves. Nobody going for some first lap heroics yet. Oh, we see smoke. We have a car around. It looks like Jake Luther. No, Jake Luther got through there. Brian Long is involved. And I can't see the other car that's involved. It looked like maybe somebody got there on the exit curbing and got around. We're going to pull up the replay now. We're on board with Brian Long and gets collected by the red and white car of Carson Keene, possibly. The 99 of Carson Keene gets out onto that exit curbing on those cold tires, spins it around, collects Brian Long with him, and spreads out some of the mid-pack of the middle of the field a bit. And Ricardo Serrano is running away right now. It looks like he's up by a second or so. So made the best of this first lap. And Alex, are you ready to see some IndyCars in action?
I, having just learned about this about 2 minutes ago, still have to loading into the session at the moment, but I think I am ready. You know, I do love the IndyCars. Very fun to drive on road courses. Very fun to watch going around road courses. So at the rolling hills of New York, I think it's going to be set up to be a pretty good race here tonight, right?
It looks like we have another car off speed. The number 9 of Kevin Dixon. Not sure what happened with him. Looks like he's trying to limp that car home. I see some wing damage on the car, so he must have made some contact with possibly that. Barry Cochran has some very heavy suspension damage on the rear of the car. I'm guessing that those two have come together at some point and are now coming into the pits to take repairs. A couple more diving into the pits to take repairs behind them. It is Gavin Ellsworth and Kevin Dixon coming in to take repairs. So some mayhem early. Watkins Glen always delivers. You see we are on board with Augustin Castro now in P4, hot on the heels of P3 Q Nin. And it looks like the leaders are already checking out. Ricardo Serrano has used 2 pushes to pass, and Josh Benjamin has used 1. The rest of the field have not used any. So they have been able to form a breakaway as he's going to dive to the inside. And it looks like Q is going to back out and give him the position. And Augusta really making those primaries work early.
Yeah, and primaries are going to be what a lot of these guys are going to want to use early on, because those are the tires that are going to last the longest. So after 10 or 15 laps or so, if these guys haven't come into the pits, I reckon that some of the drivers that are on the alternates, on the reds, they're probably going to start to struggle a bit, and that's where you're going to see the drivers on the primary tire compound. That's where they're going to start to excel and start to pull away.
So the red tire is probably good for about 6 laps, maybe 7 laps here at Watkins Glen. And then the primaries will be good for about 12 or 13 laps, maybe as many as 15 laps if you can really take care of them.
Yeah, and that's just going to be the biggest thing. Tires is going to be the name of the game here at this track. I mean, it usually most importantly is at a lot of IndyCar road course races, and looking like that's going to be the main deal. But the thing that I'm a little bit perplexed about is, as we see the 86 car here, Serrano and Benjamin there in P1 and 2, they're both on the alternates, and then Castro and Flack behind them, they're both on primaries. And my question about that, Randall, is, I mean, is that going to be a worthy strategy? Are they going to pit early enough to make those alternates work on a long run?
That's a very good question, and what it really comes down to is how long can they go on the primaries when they do switch to the primaries. We saw during race 1 that Castro started on the alternates, went to the alternates for the final stint, and ended up having issues. He took a really long stint in the middle on the primaries. So if you can go for that long stint in the middle on the primaries, you're going to have a very good chance of winning this race if you're already up front on those alternates.
Yeah, that's what we're basically going to have to look out for, is if some of these drivers they've taken the alternates early, we'll have to see if they maybe decide, like you said, Randall, to take the primaries throughout the middle portion of the race, then maybe pit later in the race for the alternates, and then just try and make it to the end off that and see what they can do at the end of the race, as I'm almost loaded in.
We're seeing the likes of Q-Nin starting to fall back already. He may have overdriven those alternate tires early on and is now struggling. Maybe he has picked up a little bit of floor damage from some of the curbs as he's going to run wide Brian Hotham just a little bit after touching the grass on the inner loop. So he may have some floor damage on that car that's also causing him to slow down, or he could have overdriven those tires and will be looking to get onto those primaries early. Now, if he has to pit early for primaries, you probably see him run primaries twice instead of alternates twice. Brian Hotham hot on his tail. The clock is going to pull over and give him the spot. I thought he was going defensive at first, but thinks the discretion is the better part of valor. Surrenders the spot and thinks he might be faster or able to save fuel behind Brian.
And that's another big thing here, is the Indy cars, they burn fuel up rather quickly, so we're going to have to see what some drivers do to save fuel, especially from the full throttle 1 to turn 1 to the bus stop. So you have to see what these guys do to try and save fuel, try and just make themselves better off towards the end of the race. So that way maybe they could make it on a 1-stop, although, I mean, this is my first race in this series, so it could very well be a 2-stop. I'm not quite sure.
It'll almost certainly be a 2-stop race. You would have to save so much fuel to make it a 1-stop that you would probably be too slow and it wouldn't be worth the strategy. It'd be faster to take the second stop. There are quite a few opportunities to lift and coast around this track, especially if you're following somebody. But the amount of fuel that would need to be saved in these very thirsty Indy cars would be a very high amount.
Yeah, the rate at which these cars burn fuel is pretty high compared to a lot of other cars that are at the top level of certain racing disciplines, like stock cars in the NASCAR series. They can last pretty long. F1 cars can go a full distance race without having to take fuel at all. But in the Indy cars, fuel strategy most certainly comes into play, as these guys, like you mentioned, Randall, are going to have to pit at least twice just off of fuel.
This league also limits the amount of fuel in the tank to 80% to make sure that there's going to be at least 2 stops. that opens up tire strategies and pitting strategies. It makes for a much more interesting race, like you would see on TV in real life.
Yeah, so, and just that's pretty much what we're gonna have to look out for here is when these guys start to run out of fuel, when these drivers start to run out of fuel, you know, start to burn off the tires, and they have to end up coming into the pits to fill up the tank, swap the tires, to maybe even a different compound, and that's where the real strategy is going to come into play. But currently, looks like Serrano is starting to pull away, and I think the alternates might be starting to wear off for Benjamin as Augustin Castro is catching up to him quick.
Yeah, the primaries are definitely the tire to be on right now. Those alternates are starting to fall off. They're on lap 6. We'll start to see them go over the edge and eventually off the cliff and have no grip. We'll start to see those leaders on the alternates pitting very soon.
And when the leaders pit off the alternates, that's when the drivers that are on the primary tires, they're going to take over the lead for a little bit. Then I reckon when they pit, the drivers that pitted earlier are going to retake the lead, and it's just going to be a constant battle for who's the provisional leader of the race until they cross lap 33. And another thing is, you guys probably already mentioned this up here in the booth, Randall, but these guys will have to swap tire compounds at least once, I'm reading in the iRacing session. So that's probably why some of these drivers took alternates early, just to get their stint on the alternates early to just finish the race on the primaries.
Yeah, there's a whole bag full of strategies that you can employ with tires, and it really comes down to speed, how fast you are, and how well you can take care of your tires. It's easy to be very fast for a few laps in this car and overheat the tires. So it's a fine balance between longevity with the tires and raw speed.
Yeah, I do like that car that Flack is driving right there. However, they're going 3 wide into the bus stop, these guys are. Excuse me, that was Benjamin driving that Alfa Romeo livery. And it looks like Joshua Benjamin falls back to 5th in just a corner there, just to the bus stop alone. And then Hotham almost hits him there as they head through the carousel that time by. And this 13 car is just trying to just catch up. You know, all these guys that took the alternates for their first stint, they're just trying to make these tires last for as long as they can. But currently, it looks like they're all struggling, as Castro now starting to close the gap to Serrano up front.
Serrano has really been doing a good job at keeping that lead open, but you're right, Castro is slowly starting to reel him in. So Serrano's got to make a decision. Do I come this lap? Do I come the next lap? The time is coming very soon where it's not going to be worth it to stay out there on the reds any longer. Looks like he's going to stay for one more lap.
Yeah, and so really just the next thing we're going to have to look for in this race is when Ricardo Serrano decides to head into the pit lane. And that's when this race is really just going to start to get pretty interesting in terms of strategy, because these alternates, they've started to wear out a lot for the drivers that have started on them. The thing is, there is a compound swap, so it is a pretty good strategy move to get the stint on the alternates out of the way, and you can just finish the race on primaries that you know are going to be able to last over time.
And if you can make a very long stint out of that middle stint on primaries, you may even be able to switch back to alternates at the end of the race. But every race that we've seen with this group so far, we've seen a big mix of strategies and people coming together at the end to form very tight races coming to the checkered flag.
Yeah, and it's Joshua Benjamin. We just seen him fall down the timing tower for the last couple of laps, and now he's in a group of 2 other cars that have also started this race on the alternate tire compound. So Castro has already knocked out about 3/10, now even 4/10 out of the gap between himself and Ricardo Serrano as those guys head out of the boot. And I mean, it looks like it's down to 2.3 seconds now, so I would reckon, Randall, you're right. Ricardo may want to pit this lap, throw some new tires on, and just get back out there and try and just maintain speed. We'll see what he does. It looks like he's going to stay out one more time.
And he's going to be dealing with some lap traffic, so that could provide some dirty air, but it's also going to give him a slipstream. So that may be why he stayed out there for another lap, to get a little bit of benefit of slipstream, put in one more quick lap on those reds, and then come in for a different set of tires. But Castro is slowly reeling him in. We see Kwok Nin had fallen back in the field just a little bit. I think maybe he was just taking it easy on the tires and is going to try to run those reds a little bit longer than everybody else to maybe have them available again at the end of the race.
Yeah, it definitely could be an adult, and he's also in a pretty decent spot to save some fuel here, just riding in line behind the 73 and behind the 78 and 13 cars. So Quacknin is in a pretty good spot right now if he just wants to sit here, save the tires, save some fuel, and try and make this stint go for a while on these alternate tires.
Yeah, as I mentioned, he was falling back, and now the pace is stabilized. I think he was just playing it safe and taking care of those tires. The gap now up front is down a couple tenths this lap, so Serrano definitely is needing to come into the pits very soon to change off of those tires as that lead evaporates another couple tenths going through the transition back onto the cup layout. We'll see now if he comes into the pits this lap as he's on the front straightaway, and it looks like he stayed out again, going to push another lap. So he may be hoping to go to the Reds at the end of the race and trying to make this first stint really stand out. He's going to have to get 20 to 23 laps out of his primary. And we see Joshua Benjamin coming into the pits, the first of the red tires to come in and change tires.
Yeah, we'll see what compound he puts on us. It looks like currently just traveling down the pit lane right now. Doesn't look like he's in his stall just yet. So we'll see what tire set Joshua Benjamin puts on. It looks like he's in his pit stall now. So it looks like he did put on the primary compound tire. So it looks like he'll be trying to play out this middle stint to go for a while. And we'll have to see how that helps him at the end of the races. I mean, we could be looking at a provisional podium for him if he plays his cards right, because these drivers that are still on the alternate tires are struggling. You can see the gap that Agustin Castro has closed up to Ricardo Serrano, almost under a second now, or almost under a second and a quarter back from Ricardo Serrano there in the lead. So, I mean, Augustin is coming, and there really isn't anything Ricardo can do about it.
And the amount of fuel that they need for this race, you almost think that running the primaries twice is going to have to be the strategy. And I hate to say that Ricardo's wrong. This is his race right now. He's in the lead. But it seems like maybe he's made a mistake staying out this long on the red tires. As we see him now, he's pulling into pit lane, finally surrendering the lead and going to change those tires. We'll see if he goes to the blacks or the reds.
Yeah, let's see what tire compound he puts on as Ricardo Serrano into the pit lane. So that's going to put Agustin Castro into the lead. Now we have to see what Barrera can do from P2. If he wants to try and make a move for the lead or just try and play out this stint long, which I reckon a lot of these drivers are going to do. And somebody mentioned in the YouTube chat that I was looking at that these drivers are going to have to, well, he mentioned the pit lane opens for pretty much their first stop at around lap 9, which seemed to be correct so far. So I believe that was when Joshua Benjamin headed into the pit lane. So looks like the first of the two green flag pit stops are underway as David Stevenson now catching up to Kwok Ning and Brian Hotham here, as it looks like those primaries have really started to fire up for the 777.
And not only are the primaries in a good working range right now, those reds are going to be dreadful to drive on. They're going to be very low grip. The rear end is going to want to step out at every time you press that throttle. So they're just trying to make the most of it, get around to the pits. I would be surprised if they stay out for another lap, but it is possible they could go one more lap on fuel. But almost certainly they're going to pit this lap.
Most certainly, as we'll see what happens when they come to the final two corners. It looks like only 4 cars now that are on the lead lap have stayed out, and now bring it down to 3 as Brian Hotham now into the pits there in the 13 car. So Kwoknin elects to stay out one more lap, but Hotham deciding to come in and switch to the primaries. And here's Kwoknin, and now he's going to have to fend off David Stevenson for pretty much the entirety of this lap.
And that may be a plan. He knows that he's slower than Stevenson. He may just be trying to jam up Stevenson for another lap. As we see, Stevenson is on the push to pass to try to get this move done into the bus stop. Should easily handle it. So Q may have just been trying to slow down Stevenson for another lap and get another lap out of those reds and make his tire strategy a little bit easier going forward.
And I mean, it looks, yeah, David Stevenson able to pull that move off with relative ease. And it looks like out of the pits, Brian Hotham has put another set of alternates on. Oh, excuse me. I'm hearing from Dustin Ollis, our producer. It looks like the visual is bugged. He is actually... Oh, yeah, you can see it on the timing tower, too. The visual is bugged. So, Brian Hotham on the primary tire compound. It's just we are looking at it like it is the alternates. But Joshua Benjamin was able to get in front of it out of that. So, the 78 car is still showing a lot of pace right now.
That's right. And so they're going to take a couple laps to come up to temperature. Josh Benjamin being one of the early pitters, he should already have those tires in a good working range of temperatures and should be setting some very competitive lap times now as we're seeing the rest of the pit cycle work its way out. We're actually seeing some of the primaries come in already. That's very surprising.
Yeah, pretty much everybody from 2nd through 7th just headed into the pits, including Kwok Nin, who was pretty much the last competitive remaining driver on alternate. So the 86 car into the pits now as well as everybody else. So I reckon everybody here probably going to put on the primary compound tire. That's looking like it's going to be the story. But Ricardo Serrano, who pitted just a little bit earlier than everybody else, is going to take back over the provisional lead. Now we have to see what happens to Agustin Castro when he heads into the pits, because Ricardo's tires are already fired up. Once again, visual bug. He's on the primaries, but we're seeing it as the alternates. So Justin Barrera behind him in P3, but Ricardo Serrano with the already warmed up primaries currently just hanging out in P2.
So I believe the reason we're seeing all these pits now is for fuel. So I would be very shocked if we see red tires make a reappearance for people that have already ran them. The amount of fuel that's needed, if you ran max fuel at the start of the race, you're still going to need 24 gallons, 24 and a half gallons, which means 12 and a quarter gallons on each stop. So, and you can run, 14.8 is the max that they're allowed to run. So basically that kind of takes the tire strategy out of it. You're just going to do your one mandatory run on the alternates and then run 2 primaries is the most likely strategy.
Agustin Castro into the pit lane, so now we'll have to see where he comes out in relation to Ricardo Serrano driving this 64 car. So looks like Agustin Castro in his pit stall right now as Ricardo rounds the final corner. I think Ricardo is going to take over the lead, but Augustin's out of his pit stall right now. There he is exiting the pit lane, and it looks like Ricardo Serrano, he will take over the provisional lead, and it looks like Castro he might lose the spot to Justin Barrera. It looks like Barrera going to just be behind him. It looks like this is going to be a pretty close battle as they head up to the S's.
Barrera's already got those tires up to temperature. Castro does not, so we should see a pass here. Castro push to pass is actually a push to defend this lap. He's going to have the lead going into the bus stop. Now, can he keep the lead for the rest of the lap? We'll have to see. He's already ran down Serrano once. Can he do it again?
Yeah, and it looks like Castro isn't falling off that hard from being on colder tires. He still is doing a relatively nice job of holding on, staying in front of Justin Barrera, and really just hanging on to the gap between himself and Ricardo Serrano for the lead. Here's the back bumper cam of Agustin Castro as you see Justin Barrera just pretty much just staring him down as they head into the heel of the boot this time.
And Justin Barrera has not used any of his 10 push-to passes yet, so he definitely has some ammunition to fight with Agustin later in the race. We'll see if he starts using those very soon. Maybe this time out of turn 1, we'll see it light up.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what we're going to have to look for is now it's pretty much become another race to the next pit stop now, as Agustin Castro actually closed the gap quite a lot between the start-finish line and the heel of the boot. So Castro might be able to reel in Ricardo Serrano. I mean, Ricardo is on maybe, I'm not sure how much it would affect him, but Ricardo is on maybe 2 or 3 laps older tires than Agustin is. So Ricardo could already be feeling some of that wear, which would really help Agustin Castro. But here you're seeing the amount of push to passes used. Stevenson using one of his right now. He has the lowest, actually, sharing that with Luther and Dude, I apologize if I pronounced that incorrectly, with 6 apiece for all of them. However, the man in third, Justin Barrera, still has yet to use any, which is going to put him in a really good spot here towards the end of the race. Same thing with Kwok Nin.
Yeah, we're seeing the strategy. So far, it looks like push-to-pass has been used primarily as defense going down the straightaway to counteract the slipstream. And I think if you're chasing a car that uses the push-to-pass to keep you behind it, you might just smile a little bit and save some fuel and end up jumping them in the pits, or later in the race when you have push-to-passes left to use and they do not.
Yeah, and that might be exactly what Castro's thinking right here, as he is right on the back wing of Ricardo Serrano as they head out of the boot, this time buying through the final couple of corners. We're almost at the halfway point of this race, only about 22 minutes in, so Castro still chasing down Ricardo Serrano. He has a lot of speed in this number 49 car, and right now he's doing a really nice job at closing down this gap, as Ricardo probably already feeling some wear on those tires, so I reckon Castro probably going to try and use the slipstream. I don't think either of these drivers are going to use their push to pass. I think Ricardo might just let Castro close the gap down. Joshua Benjamin activates one of his push to passes. Looks like Castro and Ricardo just going to chill out, not use either of theirs, try and save it for later.
And also don't forget about Bobby Flack there lurking in P4. He's also another contender here. We're going to have a four-way fight for this lead coming up pretty soon. Any of these guys are totally capable of taking the lead here and winning this race. So don't sleep on Bobby Flack. He's in a very good position right now.
Most certainly he is, and that's another thing we have to look out for, is people that have maybe saved their tires like Bobby Flack and have started to make a run for the lead late in a stint. And I mean, that could be the plan of a driver like maybe Joshua Benjamin or Bobby Flack here. And Justin Barrera also saving some of his push-to-pass, pretty much all of his push-to-passes. And I would assume maybe his tires as well, trying to go along with that, with just trying to save the entire car and try and use it up later in the race. But Ricardo Serrano now starting to flex some muscle and starting to extend the gap between himself and second just a little bit.
You see Augustin Castro there getting very wide, maybe even touch the wall just a little bit. It's one thing to catch another car. It's another thing to pass them. You get close enough to the car in front of you, you start to experience some dirty air, can overdrive the tires, find them overheated, and need to back off like we've seen Augustin do now. Maybe Serrano playing a bit of a rope-a-dope, trying to get Augustin to push, thinking that he's catching, and then just going to say, no, sir, I don't think so, once he gets there.
Stevenson using a push to pass as Bobby Flack now really closing the gap back to this pack, is now the 88 car now in this race for the leaders. It looks like Castro always has that run through the S's and down that back straight up. But Randall, like you mentioned, I think as soon as he gets up to this point, about 0.5 of a second or under, he just ends up getting hit with some dirty air and just can't hold on to it. And I think that might be what's affecting this 49 car. But now he's on a pretty good run this time. Got a really good line to the boot. We'll have to see what he does to the heel.
They run a pretty low downforce trim on a track like this, so the dirty air is going to be extra effective at causing understeer in that 49 the closer he gets to Ricardo Serrano. But he's very much on his gearbox now. We could see a battle down into turn one if he can keep it together through the final two corners.
I think the thing that might be hurting Augustin Castro the most is his line exiting the bus stop. You see how wide he gets, how hard he throws it in there. Meanwhile, Ricardo breaks early, gets a really nice exit through the final two corners, which are almost full throttle in these cars. So I reckon that's probably what's hurting Castro the most here and probably preventing him from making a move for the lead, is just he's not able to get the run out of the boot with the line he's taking through it. But here's some lap cars. This is Emma Carter and Kevin Dixon. And this could very well affect the race for the lead if the leaders do catch these two drivers in the wrong spot.
Especially if they're battling each other, they need to have a heads-up moment here now and realize that the leaders are catching them, sort themselves out, and continue their fight after the leaders get by. We saw Emma Carter qualified P2 and then had that catastrophic incident on the pace lap coming out of the bus stop and is now just running a recovery race, her first race with the league, and this is not exactly how she had it drawn up.
Yeah, it's going to be unfortunate for her. I didn't know it was her first race in this league, but man, that's got to sting. You know, you qualify P2, you're doing so well, and it just ends up all shattering to pieces. But Emma Carter still has quite a bit of races left in this series to prove herself, and I reckon nobody has given up on her yet. And I mean, you can see Agustin Castro's line through there. You can just see how much time it cost him. Looks like he salvaged a bit of it on exit there, but most of the time you can just see how wide he gets to the center, just can't get it to drive off.
Yeah, it's very difficult to run tight through there. Whenever you run that corner tight, you fall victim to the transition a bit more than if you run it a little bit wider, and causes the rear end to become a little snappy, and maybe he's just trying to mitigate losing the rears and trying to save some tires. For all we know, he could be biding his time here in P2, saving some fuel. This is the most important fuel stint for saving. So if you can save fuel here, it's going to make your final stop shorter, or possibly this stint longer, and you may have the option to go to the reds for that last stint.
Bobby Flack makes a move around the outside of the bus stop for P3, but that costed them quite a bit of time to the leaders. However, Bobby Flack moves himself into the podium places there through the bus stop. It was a pretty clean move, gave Justin a lot of room and still managed to get around him. And still, nobody up front has elected to use any of their push-to-passes so far. Ricardo is holding on to his. Augustin is holding on to his. Same with Flack, Barrera, and Hotham. They've all elected to hold on to their push-to-passes, just trying to hang out for now as Randall, like you mentioned, this is really the most important fuel stint of the race.
And nobody wants to blink with the push-to-passes, because if you find yourself short compared to your competitors, you're going to be hurting at the end of the race while everybody drives past you on the straightaway up to the bus stop, and you're standing there holding.
Yeah, I mean, that's just gotta be something that maybe Bobby Flack is thinking here. If these two start racing for the lead, it'll draw Bobby right up to him. And I mean, Bobby's just got to think if he saves the fuel here, lets those two race in front of him, he might end up in front of them if he can just save a little bit of fuel, spend less time in the pit lane, swap those tires and get out there before Ricardo and Castro can even think about where they went wrong.
See, if you're in Ricardo Serrano's seat, you're watching that mirror a lot and see if the car behind you is actually saving fuel, and if they are, you will start saving fuel too. You see him there weaving to try to break the draft to prevent Castro from saving fuel. The problem with that, though, is you could easily get caught sleeping and get baited into saving fuel, and then that car behind you can jump on the push-to-pass and fly right past you.
And I reckon all of these drivers trying to save their push-to-passes for the final few laps of this race, and just trying to make sure that they have the push-to-passes to last to the end of the race. Because if you're stuck racing for the lead with 2 or 3 laps to go with no push-to-passes, you are not going to have a fun time, as all the other drivers that have saved their push-to-passes are just going to fly around you down the back straightaway.
And as I mentioned earlier, the push-to-pass worth about 5 to 6 tenths without a slipstream coming out of T1. It works all the way through the S's and down the back straightaway. It doesn't turn off until they lift to go into the bus stop. So that's a long time to have that extra horsepower. You'll start to see them very soon. They're going to be at the point where they can use 1 per lap, and we might start seeing Flack and Barrera use them earlier than Castro and Serrano.
Yeah, and that's pretty much just got to be the... Oh, it looks like Castro actually lost quite a bit of time there. I'm not sure if... I was trying to look at the broadcast notes to try and find something, but it looks like he lost pretty much almost a second there in P2, and now Flack is going to have the opportunity to make a move now, and Flack is going to take over the second spot.
Oh, no.
But Flack way wide, and he's around, and he's into the barrier. That's going to break his front wing, maybe his left front tire too. It has broken his left front tire. He cannot steer that car at all. Bobby Flack had it laid out perfectly for himself, and it is all shattered here through the bus stop. He was trying to make the move. He got that completed too. Onto the brakes for the bus stop a little late. Looks like caught that first curb. That got the car unsettled. And it looks like he just overcorrected a little bit and just ended up nosing it into the safer barrier, trying to just mitigate any damage.
That's right. We talked about it during qualifying. Those curbs are killer, and we saw that the rear end actually caught more of the curb than the front end. The rear end ended up bouncing up higher, so when the car landed, the front wheels landed first, had a lot of grip, then the rear landed, and it just caused the car to spin.
Ricardo Serrano into the pits. God, you could see how much Flack was struggling there to get that car turned through the right-hand corners of the boot. I reckon he might have towed. No, he's still driving it, but Ricardo Serrano the first to pit, and it looks like it'll be for the final time for him as Barrera elects to stay out, as well as Agustin Castro. And here's a bit of a battle here between three cars, between David Stevenson, Joshua Benjamin, and Kwok Min here. And it looks like Joshua Benjamin, I mean, he took the alternates early, so I reckon everybody else is going to take their alternates now. So Ricardo Serrano back onto the primaries for the final time, but I reckon everybody that started on the primaries, they're going to have to take their alternates now, and we have to see what maybe a driver like Joshua Benjamin does if they pit a little bit late, try and maybe swap to the alternates for the final fuel stint to try and maybe just be a little bit faster, try and make some moves.
If you've saved your alternates for the final fuel stint, you're going to be likely in a world of pain at the end of the race. You're really going to have to stretch those tires out longer than they're supposed to work. So you're really going to have to take care of them. Otherwise, at the end of this race, you're going to be hanging on for dear life.
Yeah, and that's just where trying to balance everything comes into play. If you take the alternates, you got to know that towards the end of the race, those tires are going to start.
The slow car.
Something happened. Yeah, something happened to Castro. He's been slow this entire lap. I don't know what he's maybe trying to do here, but it looks like that's a big red car upside down. One upside down. I think that is Kwok Min in the 86 upside down on the front straightaway. What happened there?
It looks like just a miscommunication. Joshua Benjamin on the racing line, then decides to pull over into the pits, causes Castro to check up. Kwok Min had nowhere to go but into the back of Castro, ends up on the lid. Luckily, the halo and windscreen protecting him, and that's going to be an unfortunate end to his race. He was on a very long stint there. He stretched the first stint out as long as possible on the red tires. Maybe we're going to see him on the alternates afterwards, but now he's just going to be running for recovery.
I don't know. I think he might be out of the race. That was a bad impact for him, and it really probably damaged that car. Could have broken an axle as well. But here's Ricardo Serrano now on fresh primaries. We have to see what Justin Barrera tries to do. Is Ricardo is going to be on fresher tires? Actually, I'm not sure if he will be on older tires at the end of the race, but he'll be able to set faster laps at the moment to really put Justin Barrera a little bit further behind him. But if Barrera takes tires early or later, maybe takes the alternates, he's going to be a lot faster than Serrano.
Serrano's also using another push to pass, so that's going to give Justin Barrera 3 in hand to use against him. And in just the space of 2 laps, we've seen this 4-car race become a 2-car race, as we see Brian Hotham dip into the pit lane. And I cannot remember how he started this race, and I'm going to guess that he started on reds. So we'll see what he switches to. We'll have to keep an eye on the timing tire as he changes those tires. Dave Stevenson up to P2 with only 3 push to pass left. He's on the push to pass now. He's making the most out of this middle stint. He's really been on that button a lot.
He could be on an in-lap here trying to use the push to pass to give him a fast in-lap. This could be his last lap in the stint. Here's what happened to Agustin Castro. Oh, no. Looks like the curbs caught him off guard again. Ended up knocking the front wing off. Actually, that could have been just now that happened. Excuse me, I'm hearing word from our producer. That was literally 10 seconds ago. It happened just now. Caught the curbs the wrong way, sent that car around in the bus stop once again.
All on his own, too. It just shows you how tricky the bus stop is in these cars. Those curbs will really bite you. You need to stay away from them. We've seen some drivers able to hit them and use them. Others, not so much.
Neil Alexander heading out of the pits. Duder is going to be right behind him here, though, on alternates. I'm not sure when Matthew Duder pitted last, so it looks like we might have a visual glitch again here, as it looks like we're seeing as Matthew Duder's on the primaries, but the overlay is saying that he is on the alternates, so I do believe he is actually on the alternates, trying to catch up to Neil Alexander now. And this is a strategy that you're seeing a lot of drivers might do, is David Stevenson into the pits now, is that if these guys stay out for longer, they might take alternate tires to give themselves more speed at the end of the race, especially if you're Justin Barrera trying to beat Ricardo Serrano.
So Duder pit on lap 20, but he is also a lap down to the leader. He'll be at the very edge of fuel range with that stop. So he may have to save a little bit of fuel or possibly come in for a splash and go.
Stevenson and Otham side by side through the back of the boot. Here's Ricardo Serrano heading up through the S's now. He's got a car right behind. Oh, wow, he went really wide out of the S's. I'm not sure what he just did there. Might have maybe just lost focus for a second, ended up going wide. He's okay through the bus stop, but that was really weird. I'm not sure what just happened to him.
I think it may be a miscommunication, or he misunderstood where the lap traffic car was that he was passing and ran a little bit wide. Also, the marbles build up there exceptionally bad. So once you get up there off the racing line, you can find yourself losing grip as the camber falls away and you get those marbles on your tires. And you saw him chase it all the way to the grass and manage to hold on to it. Justin Barrera, our leader, in the pits now.
Yeah, and this is where this race is going to really start to heat up, as Luther is going to take over the Luther is going to take over the lead if he stays out this time by Ricardo Serrano, your provisional leader. I think he might take the lead from Justin Barrera, but the thing is, I believe at this point, Barrera is going to take the alternate tires and be really fast at the end of this race. He's not going to have to go very long on them. Now Barrera's in his pit stall, and yes, he will put on the alternate compound tire, and he's heading out of the pits now. It looks like Ricardo Serrano going to take over the lead, but the thing is, Justin Barrera is going to be charging hard on these alternate tires.
And he still has 10 push to passes as Ricardo is on the button again. Will only have 6. Now he cannot overdrive these tires because he still has quite a distance to go. He has to do 8 laps on these tires. So 1 lap to get him up to temperature, 7 laps in anger, but it can't be too angry. He can easily overdrive these tires. And then at the end of the race, on the last 2 laps in the most crucial time, he can find himself low grip.
You can see how he was swerving a little bit to try and get those tires warmed up faster. Here's a gaggle of cars between Matthew Duder and then back to Gritzko there in P10. So pretty much from 6th to 10th, they're all in a pack right here. Eric Starpoli going for a move now on the inside around Neil Alexander. He'll get it. Now Christian Gritzko going to go for the same thing. These two will be side by side up through the S's. It looks like for now, Gritzko going to get the draft, and he'll take the spot over as they head up through the S's.
And a big shout out to Eric Starpoli, who started last in the field. He is up 14 spots right now behind Matt Dweeder, who is up 13 spots. So these guys have really moved forward this race. Now going to fight each other here in the closing stages. And
most certainly is, Duder way wide out of the carousel now. He's going to have to defend from Starpoli behind him, as these two really jostling for position now as Justin Barrera starts to try and close the gap down from between himself and Ricardo Serrano's. It looks like, wow, Duder falls way back there through the toe of the boot and almost gets shoved off track by Christian Gritzko. Here's these two are going to go side by side into the heel. All of these drivers on the alternate compound tire, and it looks like Gritzko going to take over P8.
This is a very, very tight pack here. Any of these cars could end up at the front of this train. You see Bobby Flack leading them in P6, has made a really good recovery run off after that unfortunate incident in the bus stop after making a move on Justin Barrera for position. Now leading this pack in P6 and on the alternate tires. So I think he might end up surrendering a few of these spots by the end of the race.
Well, I want to go back to the leaders as Justin Barrera has literally gotten that gap under a second now to Ricardo Serrano. And honestly, Randall, with having not used these push-to-passes, do you think Justin Barrera might have forgotten to assign himself a button for it, but it's certainly not affecting him now?
Yeah, if he is not using them, he's definitely going to be fighting with one hand tied behind his back as these tires start to lose grip in the closing stages of this race. So he needs to remember to use them and get on that button and make that move and try to break away from Ricardo Serrano as quickly as he can. And I would like to mention that Emma Carter did put in the fastest lap time her last time around.
Yeah, that just shows how fast that 70 car is, and she'll probably be a major factor next week, no doubt about it. But I reckon Barrera, is Ricardo Serrano going to hit the push to pass as these guys head up through the S's? I reckon Serrano could try something in the bus stop. This has been where he's made up the most time as we go on board. Now down the back straightaway, Ricardo Serrano using the push to pass. It's not really helping him though as these guys head through the bus stop. You can just see how much faster Barrera is through here as he's able to close the gap down by a tenth right on the back wing as they head through the carousel.
And Barrera might be saving these push to passes knowing that he's going to have the better tire and they may become pushed to defend to counteract that slipstream going down the long straightaway and possibly on the front straightaway or between the heel and toe of the boot.
Yes, these two, looks like Barrera's going to get there. Blinks a little bit off the corner, but he'll get there down the back straightaway of the boot. Looks like not there just yet as Barrera is Serrano still blocking, dives it into the heel of the boot. They'll be side by side as they head out.
A very bold move to make the outside move. Going to have the inside here on the transition. Going to take over the lead. Now, he just needs to hope that he didn't overdrive his tires, making that move and getting around the Serrano, and needs to start using that push to pass. Serrano's used it another time. He only has 4 left and is using it once again. Barrera really needs to start using his push to pass to defend. He has 7 more of them than Serrano. He's easily has this race in hand as long as he can keep Serrano behind him.
I honestly think that Barrera forgot to assign a button for push to pass. Here's Gavin Ellsworth here driving the 14 car. Looks like an incident for him as he's heading out of the boot. Gets a little bit wide. Oh, clips the grass, sends that car around. Almost gets another car involved before he quickly tows it back to the pits. But Ricardo Serrano tried to make the move going into the bus stop that time. It couldn't hold on as now Barrera going to start to pull away.
And we see on the car, it looks like Serrano is on the alternates. We know that he's actually on the primaries. It's just a graphical glitch. So right now, his job is to keep as close to Barrera as possible and try to push him to try to get Barrera to use those tires up so that with 2 laps to go, 1 lap to go, that he has the better tire to be on.
Yeah, and the thing is, Serrano's primaries, I mean, Barrera's alternates, they could start to wear out, although I'm not sure if that's going to affect him really at all. Serrano still on these primaries, still just struggling to find grip after having been on him for now, I believe. As he crosses the line, it'll be the 8th lap that he's been on these primaries, could be the 9th, and he's probably starting to really feel the effects of worn-out primaries. And the thing is, I think Barrera is probably going to be good to the end as those alternates, when he gets to the white flag, are probably going to be just starting to wear down. But Serrano doing a pretty good job still holding on to this.
It's going to come down to which tire is better when it's completely worn out. Is the alternate better when it's heavily worn, or the primary? I suspect, like you said, that Barrera might be the one on the correct tire at this point, having stretched out that middle stint.
I don't know though if Ricardo has saved those if Ricardo has saved those primaries a little bit, he could start to fire those tires up as Barrera's tires start to fall off just a little bit here as they head back into the boot. As Serrano, as fast as Barrera caught and passed Serrano hasn't really lost this gap by that much.
And that's exactly what he needs to do. He needs to stay as close to the gearbox as Barrera as possible, push him possibly into make a mistake. Definitely wants him to overdrive those tires as much as possible. This race is far from over.
Yeah, and I mean, Serrano's still doing a pretty good job of holding on to this gap. Start holding on the push to pass, trying to get up to Gritsko now. Those drivers, I think, are on the back straightaway heading towards the bus stop now. Here they are. They're going through the carousel this time by Starpoli, trying to make that move to put himself into P6, but really now the battle is all for the lead as Serrano has this draft now. I really think Barrera forgot to assign a push to pass button, which is going to give a bit of an advantage to Ricardo Serrano if he can time these push to pass as well. I would reckon he might want to use one now and probably on the back straightaway on the next lap or the last lap here when Barrera's tires are going to be the most worn out.
You see he is on that push-to-pass button now. They'll have one more to use, and he's going to have quite the run. Barrera is going to be forced to defend as he dips back in for just another taste of the slipstream at the last second, but it's not going to be enough to get the pass done. One more use. We could see a drag race coming out of the final corner, and if he's able to save that push-to-pass for that drag race, he will probably win it.
One last push to pass for Ricardo Serrano to use to try and put himself back into the lead. I would reckon he's got the fresher tires at the moment as Barrera is starting to probably feel the effects of worn out alternates. We saw Serrano pretty sideways out of that corner, started losing a little bit of time as now Barrera just trying to hold on all he can as these guys both probably feeling the effects of tire wear, but I reckon it's probably worse for worse for Barrera at the moment.
It's very tough to tell who's going to be better on tires at the end of the race. like I said earlier, which set is better, the primary or the alternate when they're completely worn out? Normally, you would say that the primary would be better when they're worn, but with 3 laps, did he contact the wall there coming out of the final corner? It looked very close.
No, he definitely hit it. I saw the fronts get in the air a little bit after he hit the wall. That was pretty hard, and he's on his last push to pass now, so he has to make this count, and if he doesn't, he might not get another shot. 2 laps to go. Ricardo Serrano got the gap under 3/10, under 2/10 now, as they head down the back straightaway for the second to last time. And it looks like Barrera defending the inside again. Serrano goes out wide. We'll have to see what he does, and it looks like Barrera still holds on to it. Serrano goes out wide. He'll end up having to cut through the grass. That's going to be a slowdown penalty, and that might have just handed it to Barrera.
Yeah, we saw Serrano pulled out from behind Serrano's car very early, and that may have caused him to not be able to get the move complete. He needed to stay right behind Barrera all the way until the very last moment, then pull out. So I think possibly pulled out just a little bit early and didn't get full benefit of the slipstream with the push to pass.
Staropoli's also trying to make a move on Chris Gritsko, as well as Neil Alexander trying to get around Flack. Is still a battle for these drivers, as now they head down the back straightaway for the second to last time. Staropoli gets out in front. They go side by side through the bus stop. Staropoli goes a little bit wide. Gritsko is still able to hold on.
See Gritsko get a little bit loose coming through the middle of the bus stop there. That's not necessarily a bad thing. You can really use the slip angle on these cars to get some speed and carry some speed through some of these apexes. Gritsko doing a very good job defending.
You can see Staropoli was very wide, but we are on the white flag lap now. This will be Ricardo Serrano's last chance as they head out of turn number 1. He won't have push to pass to help him last time. He might have wanted to save it for now, as now he'll have his greatest gap. And it looks like we're stuck on Staropoli at the moment. I believe Dustin Ollis having some trouble with SDK at the moment, but that's Staropoli going around.
Just had too much of it. And the leaders all over the track. What happened here?
I don't
know.
Who's
have the lead, but it looks like Barrera's going to take the lead back, and I would think that Serrano probably has another slowdown penalty by the line that he took through the exit of the bus stop, and maybe we can get that pulled up on a replay.
Here it is. They were heading into the bus stop.
A little bit of contact.
Yeah, that forced Ricardo to go through the bus stop, and it looks like that's him starting to slow down right there through the carousel, letting Serrano or letting Barrera back through. And I don't know if Serrano's going to have another shot through the final couple of corners. Serrano trying all he can on these tires, but it doesn't look like it's going to be enough. He'll have 2 more corners, but it looks like it's going to go the way of the 419 car. Justin Barrera plays the tire strategy perfectly. He'll come around the final corner to win at Watkins Glen in the WSRL IndyCar Series. Ricardo Serrano ends up P2. Fantastic drive from both of them. And in the battles in the back, it looks like Neil Alexander still trying to get around Brian Flack here. Hotham P3, Stevenson P4, Luther P5, Gritsko 6th, it looks like.
Bobby Flack with a big moment there.
Yeah, he got really sideways.
Okay, he got a little too much of the curve there at Apex, experienced a bit of oversteer, caught it, and fell back into the clutches of Neil Alexander. Does Neil have something for him for these last couple corners? Neil has no more push to passes. Bobby has 3 left, so Bobby will likely use that coming out of the final corner and be able to easily defend this position.
And you can see even how sideways Bobby got out of the boot, but it looks like Bobby Flack going to be able to hold on to this one. Neil Alexander tried to make one last push, but it wasn't enough. Neil Alexander takes P8, and it looks like next across the line going to be Carson Keene in the 99 car. Here he is. Across the line, then it'll be Harris and Carter, and that will round out the field. Here's Clay Harris in the 313, then Emma Carter. And I mean, you got to feel bad for Emma. I mean, she's definitely going to be a contender next week, but just unfortunately, first race you qualify P2 and just ends up not going the way you wanted it to at all. But Emma Carter, great drive from her to finish P2, great recovery race from her, and I reckon she will be up there most certainly next week. But what a finish.
What a recovery run to finish P12 after a start like that is definitely something to put in the W column, even if it is a little painful.
Yeah, and Here are your race results. Justin Barrera beats Ricardo Serrano in a final lap slugfest. Ricardo ends up P2 out of that. Brian Hotham is there in P3. Stevenson in P4. Jake Luther in P5. Christian Gritzko in P6. Bobby Flack there in 7th. Neil Alexander in P8. Joshua Benjamin in 9th. Carson Keene in 10th. Clay Harris in 11th. Emma Carter, good recovery race from her. I reckon she'll be back up there next week, most certainly there in P12. Matthew Duder in P13. Kevin Dixon in P14. Barry Cochrane there in P15. Eric Starpoli in 16th. Gavin Ellsworth in 17th. And Kwok Nin finishes the race on his roof back there in 18th. Augustin Castro, unfortunate mistakes for him, lead him finishing 19th. And Will Love in 20th. Mike Weir in 21st. And Brian Long, it looks like he did not start the race there in 22nd. But Randall, who have you managed to find first for our interviews tonight?
I have with us now the winner of the race, Justin Dive Bomber Barrera. Justin, what a win, and tell us a little bit about that last lap.
Oh man, I'm over the edge, adrenaline pumping and everything. I wasn't actually going to do this race today. I had some other stuff to take care of, but that stuff was causing me issues, giving me headaches. So I used this as a just to get my mind back. But yeah, the last lap, it's crazy. Unfortunately, you probably figured it out. I didn't have push to pass because I forgot to map the button.
You answered one of my questions.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you. We were commenting on that, why you weren't using the push to pass.
It wasn't because I was trying to prove a point for sure. It was because I was dumb. But yeah, I thought I would be fine as long as I had him into the bust out. And yeah, that was really, really sketchy. I think it was the last stop when we did that into the bus stop. It was a either do or die at that point, and I was not going to give up the inside into the bus stop. But yeah, after that, I think everything else I wasn't worried about too much.
So you had Serrano in your windscreen there after you took the last pit stop. You put on the alternates. You had to know that he was on the primaries. What were you thinking as you were chasing him down?
Well, he's a very fast driver, and I wasn't sure what tire compound he may have been on. I assumed he was going to be on the primaries, but you never know. And I knew as long as I would have if I had a certain gap to him, maybe like 4 or 5 seconds or less, then I probably could catch him with the tire difference. Now, catching's one thing, passing's another. Without the push to pass, I could tell he was using it. I could see it. Like, I was in his draft and he was just pulling freight training in front of me down the straight into the bus stop. And I knew the only way to get around him, I didn't know how many he had, but was to send it somewhere. It was probably going to be a send into the bus stop on the outside. I don't even remember what I did.
You pulled it off in the heel of the boot on the outside and made it stick on the transition.
That was a whole battle through that lap, now that I remember. That was an intense battle in my opinion. And then when I finally got in front of him, I just waited to see if where he'd attack back and come back at me, because I figured he still had some push to pass remaining.
Well, while we have you here, is there anybody you'd like to shout out or say thanks to after your win?
Yeah, the Sudi guys, Shut Up and Drive It guys, the Wrong Stuff Racing League, Brandon Dollar Designs for his designs he makes, and then of course basically everybody that's helped me out to get here, my folks, mom, dad, sister, brother, and all the other great people out there.
Well, congratulations, Justin, on your win, and hopefully we see you back up here in the interview booth again in weeks to come. Good race, and have a good night.
That was one for the books. That was.
Accidentally dragged myself out there too. And Alex, we have now in the booth Ricardo Serrano, our P2 finisher, if you'd like to ask him a few questions.
Well, Ricardo, a very good race for you all around. You end up coming up just short. What was it like? What was it out there battling Justin Barrera in the final few laps?
It was difficult mentally and physically. I was definitely sweating, but also the mental battle, just because I messed up that first pit stop. I selected the wrong tires, and I was waiting there for a good 5 seconds, and I knew maybe if I hadn't made that mistake, I could have been ahead of him. Yeah.
Still a very good race for you all around, and I know the difference in tire strategy meant a lot there. Justin Barrera on the old alternates, you on the old primaries. How was the grip on the old primaries compared to what you were seeing Justin Barrera do on the old alternates?
Yeah, I definitely like the primaries more than the old alternates, just because, you know, I knew I was going to have a lot more pace towards the end of the race. But one thing I failed to take into account is the fact that, you know, it's very hard to pass around this track, and it's mostly single file, so I just didn't take that into account.
All right, well, before I let you go, anybody you want to thank up here?
Yeah, my mom and my dad, once again.
Well, I reckon they will most certainly be happy about that. Congrats on the second place, my friend. We'll hopefully talk to you soon.
Thank you. See y'all later.
And that was Ricardo Serrano, your P2 finisher here tonight at Watkins Glen. And doesn't look like we have the driver in P3. We don't have Brian Hotham in here at the moment. So, I mean, just if the race in general, I mean, fantastic race. I mean, I popped in here just to help you out, Randall, and wow, I think I definitely made the right move.
Yeah, you got treated to quite a race and quite a finish there. Tire strategy and pit strategy didn't come into as much of play as I had initially thought it would. This being a high fuel usage track, they were kind of locked in. But Justin Barrera able to pull it off by doing that last stint on alternates and running down Ricardo Serrano without any push to passes.
Yeah, and that's really one of the most impressive things about it is Justin Barrera did that all without any push to pass, like he already admitted to us. He forgot to set a button for it, which, I mean, I've definitely made that mistake before. I reckon a lot of us have made that mistake before for some IndyCar races. And, I mean, it's an easy mistake to do. I mean, it's pretty easy to fix, though, is all you got to do is head into your settings and just assign a button. But definitely probably a mistake that Barrera is probably not going to make next week, is he's just going to probably set up a button just for good measure.
So very good race, and yeah, next week I believe they're at Brands Hatch. It's going to be a completely different show, so it'll be interesting to see who can work their way to the front at a track like that.
Yeah, a lot of different a lot of elevation changes at that place, and definitely a lot of fast and then a lot of low speed corners on that track. But it looks like doesn't look like we're going to get in Brian Hotham for an interview tonight. I don't see him. And yeah, so it doesn't look like we're going to get him. But Randall, if you have any final thoughts before we round off here?
Once again, the IndyCar, very, very easy to drive fast for a couple laps. Very hard to drive fast for an entire race.
All right. Well, yeah, definitely. You said it. I mean, very hard to drive for an entire race. Very just difficult to maintain and just keep putting the power down, keep trying to push 24/7. So I reckon it looks like that's going to do it for us tonight. Upcoming broadcast, first off, this Sunday, the XSLR Championship returns after a 2-week break at Wild West Motorsports Park, and the Volkswagen Beetle Lights as they start their dirt road portion and the final portion of their championship at 8 o'clock. 8:10 p.m. Eastern Time. Going to want to stick around for that. Then this Monday, XTC, the Cross Touring Cup, returns for one of their final races of the season at 8:50 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at Virginia International Raceway with the GT3 and GT4 cars. Definitely going to be a show from them. Then this Tuesday, WSRL returns at the Nürburgring GP layout at 8:50 p.m. Eastern. As somebody has joined the chat. It looks like it is not our third place finisher, so just going to move on. WSRL returns at the Nürburgring GP with the LMP2s and the GT3 Pros and GT3 AM class. That's Tuesday at 8:50 p.m. Eastern. Then next Thursday, we return here. Actually, next week it'll be Adam, not me, in the WSRL Indy Road Series at Brands Hatch. And once again, they are in the Dallara IR18 Indy cars. That's at 9 p.m. Eastern. And Next Thursday as well, Spec 5 World Tour returns for their first race of Season 11 from Twin Ring Motegi and those Mazda Miata MX-5 Cup cars, and that is going to be a show, especially what happened last time in the booth. And I've just noticed actually on our home screen here a little gag for Adam Thompson. There's a little JK sign, just kidding, as I somehow found my way up here. So that's going to do it for us. My name is Alex Anderson. I was supposed to be Adam Thompson, joined in the commentary booth by Randall, McGrew with Dustin, Ollis in our virtual production truck, and from Watkins Glen for Race 3 of the WSRL IndyCar Series. Have a good night.